What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the OBR Prospect Spotlight on the OBR Streaming Network. I'm Jacob. You can find me on Twitter at Roachism13. Do all kinds of awesome draft content over for the OBR, so you can go check out all the written work over there and do some fantasy football stuff as well. Last week in our premiere episode, we talked about my top 3 running backs in this year's class. Originally, I planned on doing tight ends for this episode. It was something I hadn't really dove deep into. But because of some of the situations going on with the Browns quarterback situation, I kind of pivoted over to quarterbacks. So I wrote this up with the OBR, and I just kind of want to talk through this real quick. My top 3 quarterbacks right now on September 26th for the 2024 draft. And I'm going to start with former Ohio State quarterback and Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers. Quinn did not play in this last game for Texas, is dealing with a little bit of an injury. They didn't play anybody. They played an FCS school, so they started Arch Manning. So I don't know how bad Ewers' injury potentially is. It may just be one of those things where it's like, well, we feel we can win. We'll give Arch, some leeway out there. So through 3 games, he didn't finish all 3 games. So a little limited sample size to start the year. 73.4% completion percentage, 691 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 2 picks for Ewers. I think what I've really seen in his improvements from last year to this year is really what has him vaulting up. Going into this year, I was very wishy-washy on Quinn Ewers as an NFL prospect. I thought the decision-making under pressure and the way he operated in the pocket, it just wasn't there. But you have seen those 2 areas that I was most concerned with has been where he's made the most improvements. He looks more calm, cool, collected, and comfortable in the pocket, something that the Browns could really use in Cleveland. I know they've got a bad offensive line, and Urus has one of my favorite left tackle prospects in Kelvin Banks Jr., protecting him on the other side. I just think his decision-making and just where he is this year compared to 2023, and if he can continue to do those things and continue to be good at the things that he struggled at last year, it really bodes well for his draft stock. I'll say that. The arm talent and accuracy to attack a defense, all 3 levels. He can do that short, intermediate, deep. He doesn't have the strongest arm. He's not going to throw it 60 yards in the air, but he can throw it 35, 40 yards in the air with good accuracy. He can drop it in a bucket. He can, if you watch him and Isaiah Bond, the transfer from Alabama, the speedster that they've got this year, especially if you watch him in that opening game, I just really think that you've seen Ewers take so much, made major strides when it comes to throwing with anticipation. Another thing that I had issues with him, but he understands where his wide receivers are going to be, understands the coverage he is seeing, good football IQ, good processor, confident in what he is seeing, confident that he understands what the defense is trying to do to confuse him, and puts the ball where it needs to be. The injury history is starting to grow. That concerns me. That bothers me, especially with the Browns right now having as many issues as they've had with injuries the last couple of years, and that continuing this year. So that stuff kind of concerns me a little bit, but he's got good athleticism, can throw it well on the move, really likes to extend plays. He'll pick it up. He'll pick up a first down with his legs if he needs to, but he just feels like a Kevin Stefanski offense. I think he can run what traditionally you have seen Stefanski do really, really well. And Stefanski might not be here. I'm not naive to that fact, but I think he will still be here. I think he should still be here, and he should get a shot with a different quarterback, because I just think the Deshaun Watson thing is not working out right now. But Quinn Ewers, for me, quarterback number 3, going into so far 4 weeks and some change into the college football season. Really like what he does overall as a player, and I think he could just really operate well in Kevin's offense. Moving on to number 2 is a guy that I think is playing as good as anybody in college football, and this quarterback has done the most for his draft stock, and that's Miami quarterback Cam Ward. I talked about him a little bit last week in a mock draft that I wrote for the OBR, and then I talked a little bit more about him in this prospect spotlight article that I wrote a little bit earlier. His numbers through 4 games are insane. There is not a quarterback prospect that has done more for their stock than Cam Ward in this game so far in this season. He's played in 4 games, completed 72.4% of his passes for 1,439 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 2 picks. He hasn't played he played Florida A&M was one of the teams that was in there. He played Florida at opening week, and we found out Florida's just not really a very good team. He went up against a pretty good South Florida team this past week that has some players that I think are going to make some noise in the NFL draft in the future. And best team that he's faced all year, and he goes out there and throws for 400 yards. Just casually, he's like, oh, I'll go up against the best defense I have seen so far this year, my first year at Miami, and I'm just going to shred him for 4 yards. He has absurd arm talent, just absurd arm talent. There's a lot of gunslinger in there. There's some Brett Favre, Jay Cutler kind of style where he may get a little bit too loosey-goosey with the ball and try to fit it into some places, but he has massively cut down on the turnover-worthy plays. PFF tracks some of these things where, you talk about the interceptions and you talk about the fumbles, but sometimes as a quarterback, you just get lucky. You put the ball in harm's way and they drop an interception, or your wide receiver knocks it down. But that play from you wasn't net negative. That was a turnover-worthy play. He's not making those throws. Making those plays, putting the ball, he's just in complete control over this offense. One thing that he really did well at Washington State before coming to Miami was a lot of these things on the run, like great athlete. Another guy he's a better athlete than Quinn Ewers. He's a better athlete than my QB1 that I'm going to talk about. He liked his creating outside of the pocket and creating in chaos. That's where a lot of his success came at Washington State, but it's also where he put the ball in a lot of harm's way. Well, this year, and the awesome guys over at NFL Stock Exchange kind of talked about this. This year, teams are not letting him get outside of the pocket easily. And he just said, who cares? I'm just going to be a pocket passer now. I'll manipulate the pocket. I'll step up. You won't let me get out. You won't let me throw the ball, get on the run to throw the ball and to make a play. Fine. I will stand here, be a pocket passer, and I will shred you with my mind and my absurd arm talent. Right now, if Cam Ward plays the way he is playing right now, the rest of the season, he's the number 1 overall pick. I just don't see any other way to cut it. Like, you're talking about a guy that's a ton of collegiate experience, starts, at the junior college level, 2 years as a starter at Washington State. Now he's at Miami. His decision-making under pressure and sometimes his footwork is just a little inconsistent. He throws off his back foot too much for me, and that's where some of these turnover-worthy plays come into. He hasn't done that much this year in the 4 games he's played, but that was a big issue that I had with him in his tape at Washington State, where some of the mechanics, but his arm levels, like he will change change arm level, throw it sidearm, throw it underhand. He will change his arm angles to make sure he adjusts to what the defense are trying to do, especially if they're clogging those passing lanes. I just think right now through 4 games, he's the best quarterback in the 2025 draft. He's still at number 2 because I just need to see a little bit more. He's going up against a very good Virginia Tech defense. There are several players on there that are going to play next year on Sundays in the NFL. If he does this again, if he goes out there and he just shreds them, he's QB1 for me. The Browns will have to move up to get one of these guys, Cam Ward or my number 1, which we'll get to in just a second. If he continues to be a great pocket passer and handling chaos efficiently and doesn't throw the ball up for grabs, a la Jay Cutler, there was never a throw that Jay Cutler didn't think that arm could make. Cam Ward's really good, man. There's not a better quarterback so far this year that has helped their draft stock better than Cam Ward. All right, let's transition to my final guy. Number 1, and it's still for me, Georgia's Carson Beck. Carson Beck has not quite had the year that we kind of thought. Going into this year, he was QB1 for most people. People are a little bit more down on this QB class than I am. I think these 3 guys we're talking about in this pod are really good. They're worthy of first-round plays. In the first 3 games for Georgia, Carson Beck's got 98.3% completion, 680 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. For me, it's all about the brain with Carson Beck. This dude has tremendous football IQ. He diagnoses coverages and pressure schemes that the defenses are trying to throw at him to a T. I think if you put some truth serum in Kevin Stefanski and he's told you what his typical, his perfect quarterback to run, his perfect system, he would design Carson Beck. Let me bring it up because I did not bring up my notes. 6'4", 215 pounds, got the ideal size to play the quarterback position. Last year completed 72% of his passes in 14 games for Georgia for 3,941 yards, 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. It's just the football IQ. It's the not making the mistakes. Yeah, he hasn't made as many great wow plays, but he's thrown 0 interceptions. He doesn't put the ball in harm's way. He's got a quick release. If you're bringing pressure on him and there's an outlet valve, he's going to find it. He's going to find it quickly. And he's going to get the ball out of his hands. He's going to allow his playmakers to make plays. If he's got time to pick apart a defense, he's going to pick apart the defense. He doesn't have the strongest arm again. Deep ball accuracy is probably a weak spot for him, but 25, 30 yards downfield, perfectly fine with that. Good accuracy, pinpoint on the intermediate stuff, the 10 to 15 range. He can really pick you apart in the middle of the field. Good athleticism, extends plays, loves to do it. Play action, boot. I just think that if Stefanski's still here, he is the type of quarterback that Stefanski covets, and he's the kind of quarterback that I think would match up perfectly with him. It's just a smart, efficient, good player. He's not got absurd arm talent, but he doesn't have bad arm talent. His short and intermediate accuracy is fantastic. I think the pinpoint accuracy thing is probably the thing that you come back to a lot, which is just he's going to put it in a place where either his guy can make the play or it's incomplete. He's not going to put it in harm's way, not very often. He can get aggressive in certain situations when he needs to, but he's a smart, efficient player. He's a safe player at quarterback. Now, that might not be quarterback one for you. And if so, you want Cam Ward. But Cam Ward has been a safe quarterback making the bigger plays that Carson Beck hasn't played. If this continues, Carson Beck's got Alabama this weekend. I'm super excited about that. Jalen Milroe, we're not talking about him in this pod, the Alabama quarterback. Great opportunity for him too. If Carson Beck goes out there and can be that dude and be the reason Georgia kind of wins, he can fight back Cam Ward. If he's not, and Cam Ward goes against Virginia Tech and plays like he just played against South Florida, I'm flipping these guys next week. That's just where it is. Next week, we'll talk tight ends on the OBR Prospect Spotlight. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you hit that subscribe, that like button, turn that bell so you know every time we go live. Browns post-game will be this weekend, or pre-game, post-game on Sunday, but hoping the Browns get back to 500. Hope you guys appreciate this. Tell me what you think. Who are your top quarterbacks in the draft? Drop them in the comments below. Love to hear from you guys. I'll talk to you guys again next week. As always, go Browns.